Well, the truth, they say, is the first casualty of war. And in the modern era of 24-hour news cycles, the internet and, of course, social media, we are inundated with information constantly. So how do we know what's true and what isn't? Former ambassador to Israel, Dave Sharma, has written a great piece in the News Limited papers today. Make sure you read it. And it's talking about this exact issue. Dave, thank you so much for your time. The hospital in Gaza, how many versions of the event are we being fed as fact?
Well, I think there have been competing versions, but obviously there's only one true version. And as is often the way with these things in wartime, it can take some time for the truth to come out. We saw after there was an explosion at that hospital that immediately Hamas claimed that it was an Israeli airstrike. Immediately they claimed that the hospital had been hit. Immediately they claimed that hundreds of civilians had been killed. But as the facts have emerged, it's quite clear that what happened was it was a misfired rocket from a Hamas-aligned terrorist group in Gaza, which fell short, crashed into the car park outside the hospital. Still a terrible loss of life, still a terrible tragedy, but Israel was not responsible for that. But by the time Israel was able to rebut that, we had media outlets and some politicians, condemning Israel for an attack that never took place.
The other point of contention has been beheaded babies. Now, Israel maintains that is fact. Hamas says it's false. Now, relying on a terrorist organisation for your information is fraught with danger, clearly. The issue I have with this is whether you burn babies alive, you shoot them or you stab them or you cut off their heads. I mean, if that's the only point you've got to argue, then come on.
I mean, I've just been shocked that this is the hill that people have been prepared to die on, that they've accepted everything else. As you said, that, women have been sexually assaulted and raped, bodies have been mutilated, people have been burnt alive, children have been executed in front of their parents, parents in front of their children. But people are saying, but hang on, it's not so bad because there's no proof that this horrible thing, which I can barely repeat on air, hasn't happened. I mean, it's a very strange sort of moral relativism that people have entered into if they're holding that up as their one card to say, well, hang on, we're not getting all the facts here or Israel's being untruthful. I mean, come on.
There's understandably so much anger, so much pain, so much emotion. I mean, from people who aren't even involved, have no friends or relatives over there at all, are just watching, they feel anger and emotion. How should the Australian government be handling this, do you think, given there is clearly a lot of support for Palestine, a lot of support for Israel, not much for Hamas, but there's some. What can the government do and what should it be doing?
Well, I think, look, firstly, we should and we do regret the loss of civilian innocent life wherever it happens, whether it's happening in Gaza or whether it's happened in Israel. I mean, each of those losses is a tragedy and each of those deaths is, will leave a scar on the families and friends around them. But I think we need to be a little careful in our language here and we need to remember what happened. Hamas was the aggressor here. Israel was the victim of a horrific terrorist attack. I mean, it's for a country the size of Israel, it's like it experienced 12 September the 11th in one single day. And of course, they have a right to self-defense, and that right extends to going in and destroying and militarily defeating Hamas. That's what the right of self-defense implies. Now, they need to do so in a way that targets the military only. They need to do so in a way that seeks to minimise civilian casualties. That's all parts of the law of war, and I have no doubt they intend to do that. But look, war is awful and conflict is awful, and that's why Hamas should never have started that. They've made their own people as much the victims of their own attacks as they have the Israeli people.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. Dave Sharma, thank you so much for joining us.